Luke 22. We read again of Jesus' last Passover, his trial in the garden, and now the trials about to begin under the Jewish Sanhedrin. One element that catches our attention in Luke's account, and only in Luke's account, is this in verses 27 through 29. He says to his followers, "For who is greater, the one who sits at the table or the one who serves? Is it not the one who sits at the table? Yet I am among you as the one who serves." That again really pictures his whole ministry, one of serving others. "But you are those who have continued with me in my sufferings." Here we go again with that question of not just why did Jesus die, but why does he need to die painfully? Jesus brings that up with his disciples as though they're suffering with him. And then he says, "And I bestow upon you a kingdom, just as my Father bestowed one upon me." I wrote this in my margin of my Bible a long time ago next to that verse. I'm tired, you're tired, but God is in control, and the end will be worth it. So the kingdom that God has bestowed upon Jesus, he's telling his disciples about it at the last hour in a way that I think it's said with this sigh of, if we can just make it through these last hours together, gentlemen, the end will be worth much more than you can imagine. There's also something that Jesus knows about Peter. It's only in Luke that Jesus knows about Peter that Peter doesn't even know about Peter. And that is this line from, I didn't write the verse down, but he says, "Simon, Satan has asked for you that he may sift you as wheat." So apparently, Jesus knows about a conversation between Satan and Yahweh, or maybe Satan had it with Jesus. Can I have Peter? Well, we know, by the way, back in Luke 22, verse 3, it says that Satan entered Judas. So we have this competition almost, or the similarity between what Satan wants is to get involved in the story of Jesus. He wants to see Jesus die. I have no doubt about that, based on what happens. He enters Judas, we learned earlier, and he goes off to the Sanhedrin, the leadership of the Jews at the time in Jerusalem, and he consults with them how to betray Jesus, meaning how to find him alone. Because when he's with people, the Jewish soldiers, the Roman soldiers, wouldn't want to cause an uprising, and neither would the Jewish leadership. So the role of Judas in this whole story is to know Jesus' movements and to find him or tell the authorities when he would be basically defenseless and able to be identified to the Roman soldiers, who otherwise would not recognize who Jesus is, likely. But Jesus says to Peter, "Satan has also asked to have you," and apparently the answer was no. It shows the utter powerlessness of Satan unless God or even Jesus allows him to do something. So we have two betrayals really to mention. Of course, we know of Judas's, and back in John 6, we are told by Jesus to the group that there was one who was a slanderer, or he knew that he was a slanderer from the beginning. So we have no evidence that Judas ever was a loyalist to Yahweh or even to Jesus. On the other hand, of course, we know that Peter, who is boisterous, shall we say, that's his reputation, yet he's a very convinced loyalist, and he will become, of course, the leader of the Jerusalem church in the next generation. Both will betray Jesus, both in the sense of he will knowingly give Jesus up to the Jewish authorities and to the Romans, but Peter will deny him 3 times that he even knows him. So that could be considered a betrayal, but we often don't call it that because we don't want to equate it with what Judas did. Of course, the difference between the two, Judas repents, kills himself. Peter repents and actually gives his life back to Jesus in a very real way. So that's, again, the ultimate difference between a loyalist and a non-loyalist, it seems. The key moment in our story, though, is covered at the very end of Luke 22. Let's, in fact, review all 3 lines by Matthew, Mark, and Luke. Jesus is on trial, and he will, and we'll do this next time when we get to John. We'll notice that Jesus goes through no less than 6 trials. 3 Jewish and 3 Roman trials. But here's the trial in front of the high priest, where he asks this in the Matthew 26 version. The high priest said to him, I put you under oath by the living God. Tell us if you are the Christ, the Son of God, the intimate one with Yahweh. The Mark version has, are you the Christ, the Son of the Blessed? So same word. And of course in Luke we read, if you are the Christ, tell us. So what the high priest is challenging Jesus to answer is, are you the Messiah? And of course by Messiah, as we've said before, that's always a pointer to a Messiah who will blank. Because again, a anointed one in the Old Testament was anointed to the priesthood or to the kingship or to be a prophet. So the Christ, that is the Son of God, which would be, this is not a term of deity, this is a term of intimacy. Are you the one that God has called upon to be the Jewish Savior or bring the nation back to Yahweh? Will you be the one destined to do that? And what Jesus gives as a response, again, Matthew, Mark, and Luke have a bit of a different spin, but here's Mark's version. It's the most clear. I am. Okay, so to the question, are you the Christ, the Son of God? Jesus says, yes, I am. And then he says this, you will see the Son of Man sitting at the right hand of the power and coming with the clouds of heaven. Now, he didn't ask, the high priest did not ask for this question to be answered. So what Jesus gives is more than just a yes. He gives a yes and. And you will see the Son of Man sitting, as though he's on a throne, at the right hand of the power, coming with the clouds. Now this is a very careful recapping of Daniel chapter 7, verses 13 and 14, where we have a human being, that's what this phrase means, a human being coming into the courtroom of Yahweh, being given all the kingdoms, all the dominion, all the rule of the earth, in front of a host of other divine beings. Amazing scene, of course, in the courtroom vision of Daniel 7. So what Jesus says is, yes, I am, and here's what we mean by a Messiah. We mean Daniel 7. We mean the being, the very being that God, Yahweh, has given to be the ruler of the entire world by God's dominion, by God's right and his decision. Well, with that, of course, we read the last verse. The reaction. They said, what further testimony do we need? For we have heard it ourselves from his own mouth. And he will be dead. Jesus will be dead within about 6 hours or so. So the irony is that Jesus will be killed for being who he is. He came unto his own, and his own did not receive him.